On Tech News Today, HP splits into two companies, plus Facebook gets slammed again for its real name policy, and Google launches an app for people who suffer from fear of missing out syndrome. Don't miss out on this episode of Tech News Today, coming up right now.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today from Monday, November 2nd, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the online marketplace for buying and selling used gadgets. Shop from a variety of certified pre-owned electronics or trade one in for cash. Give a new life to a used device. Visit Gazelle.com today. And by Prosper. Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending marketplace that connects people who are looking to borrow money with those who have money to lend. Visit prosper.com/TNT to apply for a loan now. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news of the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is CNET.com editor-in-chief Lindsey Turrentine. Hey, Lindsey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Good to see you. Happy November.
Thank you very much, and happy November to you as well. You know, it's kind of a dangerous thing to have a Twitter feed rolling when you're broadcasting live on the internet. The reason is that I'm looking at my Twitter feed, and there's all kinds of contrarian articles. The new clickbait is contrarian articles that tell you exactly the opposite of what you think is the right thing to write about, or the opposite of the truth or whatever. And just before we started, there was an article that went by on my Twitter feed that says, when sleeping your way to the top is the right thing to do. I'm not going to click on it. I haven't clicked on it, but I almost couldn't get through the opening a bit because I was laughing. So anyway, everybody beware. Never try this at home. Now, Lindsey, we are a podcast.
Or anywhere else, really.
Exactly. We are a podcast, theoretically. We're a netcast. We like to say netcast because really, let's face it, we're a lot more sophisticated than your average podcast. And but anyway, we are technically a podcast, I guess. And so we're really interested in podcasting, podcast apps, and that sort of thing. So I was really fascinated to hear this morning that 9 to 5 Mac is reporting that Apple TV is going to have an Apple-created podcast app. I guess it seems kind of expected, but I'm glad to see it. Now, you see, if you're watching the video, you see it on the lower left-hand corner, that purple with the little armless person with the sort of the halo effect. No, that's not Jesus. That is the podcast app representing an antenna of some kind. And this is really great. I think I heard some chatter here in Twit that there are already three Twit apps on Apple TV already. So
that's great.
Take a pick. Soon there'll be a fourth from Apple itself. So very cool. So I'm curious, Lindsey, how big of a podcast fan are you? Are you like huge as a consumer? I know you make podcasts, but are you really big on consuming them?
I consume them sort of on an ad hoc basis. So I listen to the ones that I'm really into. I also am a big public radio listener. Yeah. So a lot of my public radio listening happens through podcasts, but that's kind of my jam.
Yeah, I like to think of those as podcasts that they broadcast on the radio.
Exactly, exactly.
Because that's where it's going, folks. All right, wonderful. Let's jump into our regular news. Hewlett-Packard, the company that invented Silicon Valley, splits into two companies today. One company will sell PCs and printers under the name HP Inc., and that will be led by CEO Dion Weisler. The other will sell business systems and services under the name Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, HPE, and will be headed by CEO Meg Whitman. What do you think about this, Lindsey? Is this another one of those big power plays that companies like to do in the same category as big acquisitions so they can make their mark, or does this make business sense?
Oh, I think it makes some business sense. I mean, I think that Mr. Weisler has a big challenge ahead, right? And they're sort of saying like the electronics portion of HP has probably the biggest challenges. And so I think it makes sense to carve it off and focus on it specifically to see if they can make it swim. But if they can't and it sinks, then at least it kind of preserves everything else. That's what makes sense to me. Yeah, and it's really interesting because, of course, under the reign of Carly Fiorina, she tried to turn the company into a consumer electronics company, a consumer brand, and she didn't seem super interested in all that boring enterprise stuff. She just wanted to partner with all these different companies and have media players and consumer devices and so on. She liked to have celebrities at their rollouts and so on. And of course, all that was reversed once she was given the boot. Now this, if you haven't heard of Dion Weisler,
This guy was Senior Vice President and Managing Director of HP's Printing and Personal Systems Group for the Asia, Pacific, and Japan region. So that covered, you know, Australia. He is Australian. That covered Australia, New Zealand, and then Japan and Asia Pacific. So he apparently knows his stuff. But he got the lemon here. CEO Meg Whitman has the part of the business that everybody thinks is going to have continued growth and lots of you know, financial health, and they consider the PC business as a declining business, and so he really, you know, Dion, even though he has a more difficult job, I guess you could say, he also is going to come out looking good no matter what he does. If the PC division continues to decline, everybody will say, well, you know, that's just how it is. That's just how the business is going. But if, on the other hand, he can turn it around, then he'll be a huge hero. So no, I don't think anybody's going to blame him for the decline of desktop PCs or any of that stuff. So anyway,
well,
that's
plus
who he is.
He knows that Asia Pacific market very well. I mean, that's the market he's from. And they're probably, if there are growth opportunities anywhere for HP, that's it, right? They could stand to make a huge amount of money in, say, Indonesia if they carve that out the right way. He knows that market. And if I know Australians, they're generally very much like, hey, this is going to be hard. Let's do it. Maybe even more than Americans. So I mean, he probably stands a pretty good chance of mild success.
Yeah, very likely. Now, another little bit of information about HP, which I thought was interesting. The company is 76 years old. Unbelievable. Wow. Yeah, you don't hear that that kind of. Well, they're really considered the first Silicon Valley company because they started in a garage. And then they started this company, and they were making, basically electric products for the military effort for World War II, and then they grew into this sort of tech-related company, and then all the spin-offs came out of them. So the spin-offs, and then those companies spun off, and then those companies spun off, and they're kind of like if you made a tree, it goes back to HP as the original company to a certain extent. So anyway, interesting company, and I've been to the garage. It's basically
a garage.
An old shack. Yeah. All right, more news coming right up. But first, let's talk about Gazelle. I discovered a really interesting subreddit last week. It's called Flippers, I believe. Flipping. It's called Flipping. R-Flipping. And what this is it's a group of people who specialize in figuring out how to buy stuff at low prices and sell them at high prices. It's an entire subculture of people that share tips about how to find suckers, basically, to buy things at a higher price than they're really worth, and where to find other types of suckers who will sell them at a lower price than they're worth. When you buy just from somebody that you hear about, there's a good possibility that they are flipping something. They are basically trying to sell it at a higher price than it's worth. And that's one of the many reasons why you should always buy from Gazelle, GAZELLE.com. They have all kinds of great phones, and they are a straightforward company. They aren't flipping anything. They're giving you a great price, and they specialize in giving you a great price for that phone. If you have a budget, of course you have a budget, we all have a budget, and let's say your budget is $600 and you're going to go buy a $600 phone. Let's say your budget is $200. Whatever your budget is your budget. So you want the most phone you can get for that money. And there's literally no better place to achieve that than on Gazelle. I'm looking at an iPhone 6, 128 gigs for under $500. There's iPhone 6, 128 gigs for under $500. You try to buy that somewhere else, it's going to be $100 or $200 more than that, most likely. And this is, and you won't get the kind of guarantees that Gazelle will give you. They have a 30-day return policy, so you can use it for a month. And if for whatever reason, they won't even ask you the reason. They don't care what the reason is. It's a 30-day return policy. You just return it for all your money back. And so there's literally no risk. You probably won't return it, though, because every device is fully inspected. They make sure that it's working flawlessly no matter what phone you buy, no matter how much you pay. They'll make sure that that phone is working beautifully. And so I recommend that you buy your devices from Gazelle and also sell your old devices to Gazelle. You already knew that. But buying from Gazelle is the safe way to buy. No risks, no being treated like a sucker, no being flipped, etc. It's just a straightforward price from a company that is very reliable and trustworthy. Give new life to used electronics, trade in for cash, or buy certified pre-owned. Visit Gazelle.com today. A survey of parents in Philadelphia discovered that around 3/4 of their kids have been given their very own tablets, smartphones, or iPods by the age of 4. Catherine St. Louis writes about health for the New York Times and joins us to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Thanks so much.
So glad you're here to explain this because this is pretty surprising information. Now, is this typical or is there something different about Philadelphia?
That's sort of what we don't know, but several of the experts that I spoke to felt like there's no reason to believe that Philadelphia would be different, although they realize there are limitations because this was only a survey of about 350 parents in the Philly area.
So what was interesting to me was the demographics of this survey. When I first heard it, I thought, oh, these are wealthy families who are responding to a survey and they have a lot of electronics sitting around the house. Is that the case or is this a pretty broad segment?
The sample of parents tended to be low income. They also tended to be African American. So it was by no means across races or across socioeconomic backgrounds. Basically, it was largely African American and low income.
Do we have a sense of what the mindset of the parents is? Are these devices being used as pacifiers or babysitters? Or are they viewed as a kind of educational tool or something that's just perfectly harmless?
Mostly pacifiers, but they didn't go around asking about the parents about their opinions. They mostly asked about use. But the pacifier part isn't really new. What sort of seems new is, and I wish they had asked, whether or not parents are buying tablets and smartphones for their kids brand new, or really this is just an effect of the fact that every time I buy a new iPhone, I give my kid my old one.
Which could certainly be the case. I mean, I do that,
right.
With my children who are older. I don't have a 3-year-old with an iPhone. But one of the really interesting things that you wrote up is that some of these kids, even the very young ones, are using multiple devices at a time. How prevalent is that? Are there really kids who are 4 years old who are holding a phone and a tablet and using both of them?
They don't know how prevalent. That was about a third of 3- and 4-year-olds multitask. So I think what's really happening, maybe it's not as surprising because maybe it's just background TV on and then they're also using a tablet, which, I have to say I'm very guilty of. So if my kid's watching me, they might be picking up that bad habit of kind of not even focusing on just the television on, but the television's on and then you're also on your phone kind of thing. But that was about a third of 3- and 4-year-olds. I guess the point is that background TV they find is super distracting for kids. It disrupts kind of their train of thought. So if that's the case, then compounding that by also playing a game on a phone they really don't know what the effects are, but it kind of can't be good on attention span.
Another crazy result from the survey is the number of kids under the age of 1 who are using mobile devices. How many babies are using tablets and phones, and what are they doing with them? Are they chewing on them?
I know. I couldn't figure that part out. And the way I see it, maybe they have like an older sibling who's on a tablet and is 5 or 6, and therefore the 9-month-old is next to them. I don't even know how my kid could have held one of these phones, let alone used it. Especially since, keep in mind, this young kid was not sitting on their parents' lap and using it with their parent. Most of the mobile use was alone.
Unbelievable. Wow. That is incredible. Lindsey, did you have another question before we let Catherine go?
Well, Catherine, I know that you can't answer this question on your own, but what was the interpretation of this in terms of the effect that this has on kids? Is this harmful? Is it concerning? Where do we go from here?
I think that's one of the main points is we don't know what effects this has on kids. And there's a lot of guessing, but what one of the researchers I spoke to sort of said is that we need to know more about this use. We can't assume that it's harmful, and we can't assume that it's beneficial even when you're playing a so-called educational app, right? Because there's no one holding those apps to a standard that you meet a certain bar and therefore you're educating kids. So really what we need is not just surveys like this that tell us how much kids this young are using mobile devices. We need to know the effects 5 years down the line compared to a group of kids that doesn't use the devices this much.
Unbelievable. You know, like you said, we need to keep an open mind, but I'm a huge technology fan, and it just sounds kind of wrong to me. I tend to think that kids under the age of 12 shouldn't spend too much time on technology, simply because they tend to substitute real world things that they could be doing and going outside and all that kind of stuff, which I think is generally much better for kids. They can be ruined later.
Right. And also going to sleep. Don't forget there were a subset of parents who allowed their kid to play with a mobile device as they were putting themselves to bed. So think about that's displacing. Instead of lying with their child, reading a book, having that great parent-kid time, and focusing on reading, instead the kid is all alone with an app.
Yeah. It's, I went hiking yesterday. It was a really kind of an interesting experience, and it was a Sunday, and there were lots of families hiking, and I really got the sense that kids under the age of like 9 were just really disgruntled about being in a place where they didn't have a connectivity. They were complaining and all that kind of stuff, and I think that's very unhealthy. I think kids at least a couple of times a year ought to go somewhere where they simply can't get on the internet for a few days, just so they can learn that it's okay.
The interesting thing in my family is that my kids actually hate it when I'm preoccupied on my phone. And it has created this, they actually are the ones who instituted the rule of no screens at the table. I think that if you can turn the children against the screens, it has a great effect.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
My son doesn't really play on the iPad all that much, but when he does play on it, he feels like it's candy. This doesn't seem like really candy, though. This seems like an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, and Lindsey, your experience is actually more common than people realize. There's at least as much complaining by teenagers about their parents' overuse of phones than there is in the other direction. So that's a widespread phenomenon that most people are not aware of. Everybody assumes that the parents are not using that much technology, and they're upset that the teenagers are doing so at the dinner table, et cetera. But actually, the reverse is also true, and probably even a bigger deal than the parents are probably using technology even more than the teenagers are, believe it or not. Well, Catherine St. Louis is at nytimes.com and on Twitter at CSINYT. Is that CSL or CSL NYT? CSL NYT. It's not CSI. You're not a crime investigator. CSL NYT, not yet. That can be your next beat. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Google Friday launched a social app called Who's Down. Sounds like they're trying to find out who's depressed or something, but that's not the case. Ruth Reeder writes for VentureBeat and joins us now. Welcome to the show, Ruth.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for coming on the show. Now, what is this Who's Down business all about?
So basically, it's a new social app, an area where Google has been behind for a while. But it's a new social app aimed at teenagers and college students. And how it works is essentially there's a little switch, and you switch it on, and it says, hey, I'm down to do something. And then it will I don't have access to this app just yet, but from the screenshots that I've seen, it seems like Google will sort of auto-populate like things for you to do, or maybe it will make suggestions based on past behavior. And then, you sort of wait for your friends to indicate whether they are also down to do something. And then it will, from what I've read, put you into a chat window where you can sort of figure out how to get together and how to do something.
So who can use this app right away?
That's sort of hard to say. It's a private beta. It seems to be available for some students. I think I saw some Stanford University students using it, but it's certainly not everyone. I tried to get a hold of the app by saying I was an NYU student, and that failed. So, so not sure yet.
So does this sound to you personally like something that will catch on and become this huge phenomenon, a new way of using an app to sort of engage socially, or is this another Google dead end in the world of social?
It's really hard to say. I mean, there are other smaller apps and startups doing similar things. I'm sure there's a market for it in the same way that there was with Foursquare early on. So I'm not going to make a judgment call on this one just yet. It could totally take off with college students for sure. Beyond that, I'm not really certain.
Do you think that there's any chance with an app like this that people will start to reject it basically because it would be such a bummer to say that you're down and then just have no pickup? Right? I mean, it seems like there's huge, like there's actually a huge opportunity for rejection here to be like, hey guys, I totally want to hang out. Crickets.
Crickets.
You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's already plenty of opportunity for that sort of scenario anyway. Like, have you ever seen a Facebook invite to an event that nobody goes to? Like, that sort of already exists. It's sad, though it is, but it is very real. So I don't think that will be what hangs them. And the fact that they're starting with college students, I think, gives it all the more reason. Like, who is more available than people in college to do something? No one. No one is that available.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I enjoyed your attempt to destroy a phone on video last week. That was a lot of, that was you, right?
That was me. I tried. I failed to destroy it.
All right. And then this is the Droid, not the Droid Max, the...
It's the Turbo 2.
The Droid Turbo 2. Yeah, that's I love that feature, that indestructibility. I need it, actually. Anyway, that was a fun video. We played it on the show, and so, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Oh, super fun. Yeah, that phone, I think, will do well with consumers for its unbreakable properties.
Yeah, and they'll probably save a lot of money on not having to repair screens. That's one of the best reasons to do it business-wise. Ruth Reader is at venturebeat.com and on Twitter at Ruth Reader. Ruth, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Have a good one, guys.
All right, you too. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, otherwise known as the EFF, Human Rights Watch, otherwise known as Human Rights Watch, and the ACLU of California posted an open letter to Facebook asking that the company change its real name policy. Yeah, the same policy you've heard me complain and whine about on this show many times. The groups say the policy is culturally biased against specific groups of people, and in response, Facebook promised to process improvements for people who have been banned from Facebook because of their names. Specifically, Facebook says they'll let banned users explain why they're using the name that they're using, for example, that it's their name. And since Google ended its real names policy for Google+, Facebook has been the last major social network to insist on such a policy. Lindsey Turrentine, what is your view about Facebook's real name policy before I go into my prepared statement?
Well, I know what your statement is. I can predict it. I understand. Okay, I guess I could say I have empathy for both sides, right? I understand why Facebook is so intent on making sure that people are who they say they are.
Because they want all the money.
Well, yeah, but also like that authenticity in relationships is kind of what makes it an actual social network as opposed to sort of like a Second Life kind of modern version. That said, it seems completely unfair to me that even though they're making these sort of baby steps toward kind of creating a situation where, say, a transgendered person can make the case for the name that they go by, it seems so ridiculous to have to basically defend who you are. Yeah, it just seems that part seems deeply unfair. That just because you are who you are means you have to go out of your way to petition in such a way that other people who don't have the same background do not have to do. That seems wrong. So I don't, it's a very tough situation.
It is, and one of the things that bothers me is that Facebook is above the law, basically. I mean, they're beyond the reach of public pressure. Everybody else has been pressured, including mighty Google, a much bigger company, has been pressured by public opinion to change this policy and to do other things as well. I mean, Facebook gets away with murder because they have this monopoly on everybody, like, oh, your whole family's there. Everybody you know is on Facebook. So it's like you have to use Facebook, and so they don't need to have search until last week. They don't need to do all kinds of things. They don't need to be honest about their advertising when they label it as what do they used to call it, a recommended post or something like that, when it was an ad was recommended by the advertiser. They implied that it was recommended by your friends or something like that. They seem beyond the reach of public pressure, and they're only company in the social space that in fact is. And so this is a case that's just horrible. There's, the biggest examples have been Native Americans whose Native American names were not seemed real. So it's not really
ridiculous.
It's not really a real names policy. It's a normal names policy. If your name is not normal, if your parents named you Rusty Pipes or something like that, they're going to say, that sounds like a joke. That sounds like we're being punked. We're not going to let you have a Facebook account. And now they're magnanimously saying, we're going to let you explain why you're using that name, and then we'll decide, well, we'll say, no, you can't have a Facebook account. And there are many, many instances where under this real names policy, people have had to use fake names because if you use a Eurocentric name like John Smith, they just let you right in the door. But if your name is a Native American name, they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a real name. And so it's really offensive to me, and I think it's been offensive to a lot of people. And basically, historically, Facebook has been responding only to the people with political pressure, that drag queen community, people who, drag performers who basically have a stage name, mounted this huge public pressure event where they were protesting stuff. Facebook met with them. They agreed to let them use their names, but only them, because they put the political pressure on. The people without the power, without the pressure, without the ability to publicly shame Facebook, were just like, sorry, you can't use Facebook. So this whole thing bugs me a lot, as you can tell. And I just wish they would, let people. To me, the solution seems obvious. You make people use their real name. You have this whole process behind the scenes, and you allow people to use that name, to keep their real name secret. Facebook knows it, right? But the public doesn't have to. And then you can use a pseudonym, whatever you want, for your public persona. I think that would satisfy everybody, and I don't understand why they don't do that.
Well, yeah, it is very confusing. And I will say that I know actual cats who have Facebook pages. So it's also not bulletproof, right? It doesn't actually work.
There's no correlation between the realness of a name and whether or not they accept it. Does it sound like a European name? If it's, if the name is once again, if it's a Bill Smith, I've created fake Facebook pages. It's easy. They're totally fake. They're not real names, and it's no problem. But if your real name doesn't sound normal to Facebook, they will basically not let you do it. Anyway, all right, well, let's move on from this. I'm glad other people are putting pressure on them, and I don't think that their solution is going to satisfy those groups, actually. So we'll be hearing about this again. Well, Apple might soon unveil an indoor positioning app for the iPhone. The app made by Apple called Indoor Survey showed up on the App Store yesterday. The location of that app now redirects to the iTunes download page, so they're trying to pick up a few more iTunes downloads. According to the now inaccessible page, Apple Indoor Survey determines indoor position by the use of radio frequency signals and also the iPhone's various sensors. The system is similar to technology developed by Wi-Fi Slam, which Apple acquired 2 years ago. So this looks like a sure thing. Lindsey, Turrentine, they accidentally released it and then pulled it back, but I think we're going to see this probably this week. Yeah, and also just it's about time. Super useful, in my opinion. Hopefully not used for too much nefarious marketing, but actually, as a person who often needs to find like my kids in a crowded place or in the mall or whatever, really handy to be able to say, actually, here's where I am within this building. Yeah, it should be very cool, and I'd love to see that sort of thing. Well, we have some more news coming up, but first let's talk about Prosper, one of our sponsors today. Prosper is the way. They invented the category of peer-to-peer lending. They're a peer-to-peer lending marketplace where basically you can borrow money from other people who want to invest in you. You're not borrowing from a bank that's going to nickel and dime you on fees and all this kind of stuff. They are facilitating this entire thing in a very transparent way, but you can post what you want to borrow money for, how much you want to borrow, and then somebody will come along and invest in your dream, in your kitchen remodeling, in you getting paying off your high-rate credit cards, in you doing something with starting a new business or buying a new car, or whatever it is, and you can get up to $35,000 in as little as 5 days. That's enough money for one of those new Teslas coming out this year, and whatever you want to borrow the money for. I love this company because they invented this category and they still continue to lead it. They're like the original unicorn type company. They're so successful, and because they just keep delivering again and again and again for everybody, not just the people borrowing money, but also the investors. It's a better way to get the cash you need at a low interest rate, and you can check your low rate instantly right on the homepage without affecting your good credit. Just go to prosper.com/TNT. There are just 3 short snippets of information you put in the homepage, and you can get your rate. And I recommend that you do that. Just check out what your rate is, and it doesn't affect your credit. For up to $35,000 in your account as few as 5 days, go to prosper.com/TNT. That's prosper.com/TNT. Check it out today. We have some big numbers for you. 70. That's the percentage of all money spent on technology by large companies that's wasted, according to a study by Genpact Research Institute. That percentage represents about $400 billion a year, which Genpact found to be invested in projects that fail to provide the intended returns on investment. And far too much of that spending exists to support old legacy systems rather than new technology. In fact, Lindsey, they can kind of see a correlation between how much money a company is spending in relation to its other businesses and so on, and how much old technology they have. The more old technology they have, the more companies spend on that technology, because keeping old stuff running is more expensive, apparently, than buying new technology.
I always wonder how much of this waste just comes from a human optimism, right? Like all these planners who are like, it's going to take 4 months, and then it takes 7.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to speak the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And you're exactly right. That's exactly what happens. And that takes many forms. One of them is that they'll say, oh, we're going to implement this new system and we'll be able to, have, 50% fewer, tech support people. No, that's not going to happen. You're going to have 100% or more tech support people. You're going to, you're going to be investing in this new thing. You got to train people on it. There are all these hidden costs that you didn't consider. And so, yeah, optimism is a killer. And watch out. But that is a stunning number, 70%. Well, we have another big number for you, 5 million. That's how many English language articles now exist on the Wikipedia site. The language with the second highest number of Wikipedia articles is, wait for it, Swedish, which has more than 2 million articles, followed by German, Dutch, and French, which have somewhere below 2 million articles. But man, 5 million articles. That's a lot of articles.
It is a lot of articles, and not one of them is about me.
Really?
You guys, can you get on this?
Yeah, come on. Lindsey Turrentine needs a Wikipedia page, folks, right away. Right away. Be careful what you ask for.
I'm kidding. It's a joke. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. Anyway. All right, well, our TNT fan of the day is Zolani G. Radebe in Springville, Utah. I probably mangled the name. Sorry about that. Who posted this picture on Twitter and Google+. He was watching Tech News today while flipping through a copy of Wired, where he spotted what he calls this beautiful-looking Nexus 6P advertisement. That's a nice ad.
Mm-hmm. That should be seen at Magazine, though.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, but other than that, love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I showed you a TNT fan of the day pic from my own son, Kevin, when he was in Fez, Morocco. And Patrick here in the Twit Brick House was so disappointed that everybody in this picture that he took was not wearing a fez. But anyway, he also texted me this picture from the same trip while he was watching TNT inside Barcelona's Sagrada Familia. I didn't see this until Friday, but there is Lindsey Turrentine inside the Sagrada Familia, the Gaudi-designed cathedral. Anyway, so yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Isn't that awesome?
We'll have to go back there during Mobile World Congress and recreate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You going?
I'm not sure yet. Thinking about it. Planning right now.
Yeah. Barcelona. Love that Barcelona. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Lindsey Turrentine, what's going on in the world of Lindsey Turrentine?
Lots going on in the world of Lindsey Turrentine. Some good stuff over at CNET right now, including a story about that goes deep inside BlackBerry's plan to win you back with Android. It's an interesting story by our own Roger Chang. You should check it out.
Awesome, and I think it should start with the CEO learning how to use Android. We played a
good start
video. Yeah, that would be a great start. And Roger is an awesome guy, really knows his stuff, and love to have him on the show from time to time. Lindsey Turrentine at LTurrentine on Twitter. Thank you so much for co-anchoring today, and we'll see you next week.
You're welcome. See you next week.
All right, bye-bye. Let us know what's on your mind. Send us email to tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW. That's 260-868-7469. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on Yahoo, believe it or not, or you can choose some other way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. You can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Elgan. Don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight, and that is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthus and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow.